It was a funny thing. I didn't feel like there was ego flowing through that experience, Johnny. Not me, not you, not our peers. There wasn't ego. There was us all trying to.
Sister Wives star Kody Brown opened up about his unexpected strategy to avoid being pushed too hard by the directing staff, DS instructors during his time on Special Forces, World's Toughest Test, and his reflections revealed both humor and humility about the grueling experience. Describing the intensity of the show, Kody explained that there was never truly a moment of calm, even when the recruits were allowed to rest. He admitted that he could barely sleep because of the constant fear of being dragged out of bed in the middle of the night and forced into an ice-cold water drill under the harsh desert conditions, which literally left his teeth chattering from the shock. He recalled how the DS leaders, who were all former military special forces operators, would haze the participants with punishing tasks, and he confessed that he was determined not to show any weakness, since even the slightest hint of struggle would give the instructors an opening to push him harder. To cope, Kody revealed that he developed a clever little trick, fake-wheezing whenever he felt completely run down. By pretending to struggle more than he actually was, he believed the instructors would ease off, allowing him to conserve precious energy for the brutal challenges ahead. "I knew my limits physically were never truly reached," he admitted, explaining that although he sometimes acted like he was on the edge of collapse, he actually had more stamina and strength in reserve than he let on. Still, the TLC star clarified that not everything about his performance was an act, recalling one particularly tough moment when his muscles gave out during the monkey bar challenge. With sand on his hands, he lost his grip, couldn't cup the bars properly, and ultimately failed the task, something that came easily to his stronger teammates Eric Decker, Andrew East, and Mark Estes, who, unlike him, managed to power through the obstacle course. Kody humbly admitted that while he lacked their raw strength, he relied on his determination and endurance to keep going. Beyond the physical trials, however, he emphasized that the DS team also clobbered him emotionally and mentally, especially during a leadership-based challenge with Olympian Shawn Johnson East, where he made serious errors in judgment. Looking back on it with regret, Kody said he felt embarrassed and ashamed by his mistakes, acknowledging that in a real-life combat situation, those errors could have cost both him and his teammate their lives. In reflecting on the overall journey, Kody Brown admitted that while the physical challenges of Special Forces, World's Toughest Test, were punishing, the mental and emotional strain proved to be the true breaking point. He explained that the DS instructors had a way of digging deep into each recruit's psyche, exposing fears and insecurities that many contestants, including himself, would have preferred to keep buried. Kody described feeling mentally stripped down as the relentless environment forced him to confront not just his limits as a competitor, but also his weaknesses as a leader and as a person. He noted that one of the hardest parts wasn't climbing ropes or hauling gear, but having his confidence shattered in front of others when he failed to lead effectively under pressure. The shame of realizing that his decisions could have endangered a teammate weighed heavily on him, and he confessed that those moments were far more haunting than any sore muscles or physical exhaustion. At the same time, Kody found himself constantly comparing his performance to that of his fellow recruits, many of whom seemed to glide through obstacles that left him struggling. He pointed out that men like Eric Decker, Andrew East, and Mark Estes showcased an effortless kind of strength that underscored his own physical shortcomings, while Olympian Shawn Johnson East's precision and determination made him acutely aware of how much room he had to grow. Though the comparisons sometimes chipped away at his confidence, Kody also admitted that watching their drive inspired him to keep pushing when he wanted to quit. However, not all interactions were encouraging. He hinted at tension within the group, suggesting that certain personalities clashed under the stress of the environment. While he didn't name names directly, he acknowledged that living side by side with such a diverse mix of celebrities amplified the emotional intensity, especially when exhaustion and frustration were at their peak. Looking back, Kody emphasized that the most valuable lesson he took away from the show had nothing to do with push-ups, obstacle courses, or even his clever tactic of fake-wheezing. Instead, it was about humility, vulnerability, and the realization that real strength isn't just about outlasting the physical grind. It's about owning up to mistakes and confronting the parts of yourself that you'd rather hide. Though he admitted he left the experience feeling humbled and at times even embarrassed, he also shared that it gave him a deeper appreciation for resilience, leadership, and the human ability to endure through adversity. After leaving Special Forces' World's Toughest Test, Kody Brown reflected on how the experience didn't just test his endurance on the course, but also forced him to re-examine his approach to life outside of the show. He admitted that the challenges exposed cracks in his leadership style, something that struck a personal chord, considering how much of his adult life has been defined by guiding and managing a large, complicated family dynamic. The humiliation he felt when the DS instructors pointed out his mistakes became a wake-up call, reminding him that leadership isn't about control or bravado, but about accountability, humility, and the ability to put others' safety and well-being before his own ego. Kody confessed that this lesson weighed on him heavily because it echoed some of the criticisms he has faced in his personal life and relationships over the years. He also acknowledged that the emotional breakdowns he experienced on the show opened a door to greater self-awareness. Pushed to a place where he could no longer hide behind bravado or humor, he said he came face to face with parts of himself he had long avoided, doubts about his ability to inspire trust, fears of being inadequate, and the lingering shame of past failures. While painful, Kody described this confrontation as oddly liberating, saying it stripped him of excuses and forced him to start considering how to rebuild his identity in a healthier, more grounded way. Perhaps the biggest takeaway Kody shared was the realization that true strength is less about physical dominance and more about emotional honesty. He came to see endurance not just as the ability to push through exhaustion, but as the willingness to admit when he is wrong and to learn from those mistakes. "I realized I've been measuring myself in the wrong ways," he admitted, noting that while he may never match the raw athletic ability of his fellow recruits, he left the show with a renewed respect for resilience, teamwork, and the kind of quiet strength that comes from humility. Looking forward, Kody expressed hope that the lessons from the desert would carry over into his family life, giving him a new perspective on how to lead with patience, listen more deeply, and approach challenges not as a lone fighter, but as part of a team. In the aftermath of his time on Special Forces, World's Toughest Test, Kody Brown admitted that one of the most surprising outcomes wasn't just how the experience changed him personally, but also how it reshaped the way others perceived him. For years, viewers of Sister Wives have seen him in a very specific light, as a polygamist husband navigating complex family drama, often portrayed as headstrong, defensive, and at times even stubborn. On the new series, however, audiences were given a rare glimpse of vulnerability that few had ever witnessed before. Gone were the comforts of home and the familiar narrative of TLC cameras. Instead, fans saw a man stripped down to his raw humanity, struggling against the elements, grappling with fear and confronting his own shortcomings. Kody admitted that he was nervous about how people might react to seeing him in such a fragile state, but he also recognized that showing his imperfections could be an opportunity to connect with people in a deeper, more authentic way. The contrast between TV Kody and Special Forces Kody highlighted the complex layers of his personality that had often been overshadowed by family controversies. While he acknowledged that not everyone would walk away with a changed opinion of him, Kody shared that he hoped the show demonstrated a side of himself that had long been hidden, a man who is still learning, still failing at times, but also still pushing to grow. He emphasized that the humbling lessons from the desert were ones he intended to carry forward, not only as a father and public figure, but as someone determined to prove that change is always possible, no matter how late in life it comes. Ultimately, Kody said the greatest gift of the show was perspective. By facing challenges that tested his body, mind, and spirit to their breaking point, he came to understand that leadership, family, and even survival itself depend less on control and appearances, and more on vulnerability, endurance, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. Whether or not the world sees him differently after this experience, Kody Brown confessed that he now sees himself differently, and for him, that shift alone made every icy plunge, sleepless night, and punishing obstacle worth the pain. Even after the dust settled and Kody Brown returned home from Special Forces, World's Toughest Test, he admitted the echoes of the experience followed him long after the cameras stopped filming. The physical aches eventually faded, but the emotional weight of what he endured, and what he learned about himself, lingered in unexpected ways. He found himself replaying moments in his head, from the fake-wheezing tactic that allowed him to conserve energy, to the stinging embarrassment of leadership mistakes that left him questioning his instincts. More than once, he confessed, he woke up in the middle of the night with flashes of the desert environment, the barking voices of the DS instructors, or the memory of icy water jolting him awake. Yet instead of viewing these memories as haunting, he came to see them as reminders, daily, nudges to keep himself accountable and never slip back into complacency. Kody shared that one of the biggest shifts for him has been in how he approaches his role as a father and leader within his family. Where once he might have leaned on authority or control to maintain order, he now tries to lean more on patience and empathy, recognizing that real influence doesn't come from being the loudest or most forceful voice in the room. He admitted that this hasn't been easy. Old habits and old patterns are hard to break, but he sees the desert lessons as a compass pointing him toward a different kind of leadership, one built less on pride and more on humility. At the same time, he acknowledged that the show also gave him a renewed appreciation for resilience, both his own and that of others. Watching his fellow recruits power through challenges, even when they too were at their breaking points, reminded him that everyone carries unseen strength, and that surviving together is often more important than outshining one another. Looking toward the future, Kody said he now views Special Forces as more than just another reality TV chapter in his life. Instead, he sees it as a turning point, an unexpected reset button that forced him to confront who he has been and challenged him to consider who he still wants to become. While he admitted he is far from perfect and still wrestling with many of the same personal struggles that have defined his public life, he expressed a cautious optimism that the lessons he carried out of the desert will guide him forward. For Kody, the test may have ended when he walked away from the grueling course, but in many ways, the toughest test, the one of becoming a better man, father, and leader, has only just begun. Months after his stint on Special Forces' World's Toughest Test, Kody Brown reflected on how the experience has continued to reshape not just his outlook, but also his sense of identity in the public eye. He acknowledged that stepping away from the familiar bubble of sister wives and into a high-stakes military-style environment forced both him and the audience to see a rawer, more stripped-down version of himself. For years, his image had been tied almost exclusively to the complexities and controversies of his family life. But Special Forces allowed him to show vulnerability, fear, and even failure in a way that wasn't scripted or confined by domestic drama. While some viewers criticized his strategies and admitted weaknesses, others found his willingness to own up to his flaws refreshing. Proof that reality television personalities can surprise people when placed in entirely new circumstances. Kody admitted that while he didn't walk away with a flawless record on the show, what mattered to him most was proving, both to himself and to others, that he could endure. Endurance, he emphasized, isn't about never falling short, but about continuing forward even when mistakes or setbacks pile up. "I didn't win, I didn't dominate, but I didn't quit," he said, underscoring that survival in such a brutal environment was victory enough. He also acknowledged that his time on the show sparked difficult but necessary conversations within his family, especially about resilience, leadership, and the importance of humility.